This is an episode I've been looking forward to for a while. So, fantasy football is a very important part of my channel, and throughout the year, I like to set my fantasy football team and hope to win the championship. Last year, my first year of the podcast, I got exactly that. Now, it says Dallas's very own, it should really be the Game Day Hour. But in today's episode, I'm going to be revealing my 2024 fantasy football team. Now, my league is a little different. There's a different way to set up a different scoring metric. In this league, you're required to have 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 5 wide receivers slash tight ends. So you don't even have to have a tight end if you don't want to. You also need 2 kickers and 2 defenses, and it has to be like that, maybe less, but not more. And the reason for this is because there is a rule in the league where if you don't have the right kind of lineup, you could have a default like losing week because it's an illegal lineup or it's switched for you. It's very important to set up your lineup the correct way based on the league's metrics. So throughout the year, I've been giving you guys fantasy tips, and meanwhile, I've been studying my league and seeing who are the best players to draft based on projected points and what the league thinks these players are going to do, and the scoring metric and what I believe these players will do week through week. So you're about to see my fantasy team differently than how you saw it last year, and that episode was pretty successful even though I wasn't promoting it with shorts and stuff. So I'm excited to show you my team for this year. I was the 9th pick in the draft, which means I'm not going to get the best players, and it's a snake draft, so at some point I'm going to have close proximity great players and then drop off until the next round. So it's a lot tougher to succeed this year, except for like last year, in comparison to last year where I was the 3rd overall pick. So this is kind of the risk reward for winning. You get a very low pick. Now, I was supposed to be last, but we got a new person in our league, so I get to be bumped up to the 9th pick. So that helped. But now, without further ado, I've been looking forward to this. It is time to reveal my fantasy team for the Game Day Hour. One of the things I pride myself in when picking a quarterback is understanding their skill set while also looking at the targets they have around them. I think both are just as important in this league because of bonuses, because of touchdowns, because of yards. If you get around 275, you get your first bonus, which is like 3 to 5 points on fantasy because we don't play with decimals. So with all that in mind, a little bit of experimental. Remember in 2020 when the Bills got Stefon Diggs to pair with Josh Allen? I picked Josh Allen and I picked Stefon Diggs along with Tyreek Hill. And on the opposite side of this trophy, I won my first ever league, 2020. This year, Diggs moved to a new team. And so I continued the experimental trend with quarterbacks with my selections. My 4th round pick was CJ Stroud. Stroud in my league is projected to get 577 points, which is 2nd among all quarterbacks. And I've been on this guy's hype train since they got Diggs. I think that he has one of the best skill sets in the league, being a dynamic passer and also pretty good in the run game, while also housing one of the best cores. Joe Mixon in the backfield, Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins as his wide receivers, and Dalton Schultz as his starting tight end. What is there not to like about this guy? I think he's going to have a Josh Allen-esque year with Stefon Diggs there, and you're going to see the Texans be one of the best passing teams. So that's why I got him as my number 1 quarterback, and then as you can see on screen, number 2 is Brock Purdy for obvious reasons. Mr. Irrelevant has Christian McCaffrey, Stefon Diggs, George Kittle, potentially, but probably not Brandon Ayuk. But you also got Elijah Mitchell as the 2nd running back. You got Kyle Juszczyk, you got Jawan Jennings, and you got Ricky Pearsall. This is going to be a great lineup for Brock Purdy, and everybody knows that Brock Purdy succeeded a lot because of his core, and the same deal will go for fantasy. He will be my backup for the most part, but he is a very valuable backup, and on my list, he's the 9th best quarterback projected to get 499 points this year. So I got 2 top 10 quarterbacks on my list, and I got him in the 12th round. So I was very patient. Normally, I set up my quarterback in like rounds 3 through 5, and then wait till after round 10 to get the second quarterback so I can fill in all the other spots and start to build depth there. And getting Brock Purdy with my 12th pick overall, that's unbelievable. And I am surprised that nobody else went for him. Was he the best quarterback? I'm not sure. I don't actually remember. I think he was the best available, but I got very lucky. I wanted Jordan Love, but I didn't get Jordan Love, so the show goes on. I wanted CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, but Brock Purdy is going to be a great backup. And those are my quarterbacks. Now it's time to move on to the 4 running backs. With my 4 running backs, there was a lot of questions whether I just trusted number 1 running backs, 1A, 1B running backs, where I would go and when I would first draft them. It was really hard to tell where I want to draft a running back because I'm going to guarantee to get one in the first 2 rounds because I always get the best possible running back and the best possible wide receiver with my first 2 picks. It's always been a tradition because I want to balance my team throughout all the levels because throughout the weeks it can change by who does better, the wide receivers or the running backs. With that said, here are my 4 running backs. In round 1, I got Jonathan Taylor with the 9th overall pick. A couple years ago, Taylor went on a tirade. He was the best running back until injuries and off-field problems started to enter into the equation. But now that both have been settled, hopefully, this year should see Jonathan Taylor get back into being a solid RB1. On my list, he was the 3rd best running back behind Breece Hall, who was taking a pick prior to me, and I wanted Breece Hall super bad because he was on my team last year and was successful. And of course, Christian McCaffrey, who I was never going to get with the 9th pick. That was a wishful thinking part, but even though I got some interesting drafters in my league, they're not that bad. So I knew I wasn't going to get Christian McCaffrey. I almost got Breece Hall though. But Jonathan Taylor is a good running back to have as your number 1. And then my number 3 running back, or well, number 2 running back, but was drafted in round 3, is Isaiah Pacheco. Last year, I got Pacheco in a trade in which I sent Jerome Ford and Mike Evans to somebody else in return for Isaiah Pacheco. And I don't even remember the wide receiver. I think it was George Pickens. Pacheco was amazing when he played. And in my league, he is the 10th overall running back with a 194 projected fantasy points because I got 2 top 10 running backs. So that is really, really good. And my other 2 are not even that bad. The other 2 running backs, in the 7th round, I picked up Rachaad White, the running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, on my list, he is number 13, projected 173 fantasy points, so that's also really, really good. And he actually did very, very well in that Buccaneers offense with Baker Mayfield in his first year. White looks like a solid starter, and I think that he's going to be the bell cow for Tampa Bay. So expect Tampa Bay to run the ball a lot and at really good points. So he might be someone very special for my fantasy league, so I hope to start him weekly and get high production from him. And then the other running back I got in round 13 was Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I'm not sure if he's the starter or the second running back because he shares the backfield with Tony Pollard. But from what I was told by some of my peers while at the draft was that I got this steal in round 13. So Tyjae Spears is my steal pick, which I'm very excited to have. And I hope he is the number 1 running back and they use him well because a lot of people before Tony Pollard got there, before Derrick Henry left, thought that Spears was going to be the number 1 and they were excited to see what he was able to produce. You know, coming out of Tulane, he looked extremely well in the Cotton Bowl against USC, and that's where a lot of his hype is coming from. So Spears being my 4th running back, will he see playing time? I'm not sure, but is this a year he could start to stand out, blow up potentially? That I hope happens, but that's also why I have experimental teams, because I'm giving players a chance to blow up. And Tyjae Spears, he might see the playing time. Those are my 4 running backs, which I am heavily happy with. Now, my 5 wide receivers, no tight ends, because we don't need tight ends in our league if you don't want them. They're mixed in with the wide receivers, and so I just went after 5 wideouts. So being able to have 5 wideouts is very important in my league, and I tend to lean towards getting wide receivers early because there's more of them and I want to have depth there. So here is my wide receiver core. Most of them are wide receiver 1s, with one being a wide receiver 2 and the other being a wide receiver 3. You'll see. My first wide receiver was in round 2 and I got A.J. Brown. Now obviously I would want CeeDee Lamb again after the type of year he gave me, but he went with the 4th overall pick. With this new Eagles offense, A.J. Brown should be electrifying this year. Because a lot of attention is going to be to Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown could potentially put up some big numbers this year. And because of that, that's why I got him as my wide receiver 1 and did not go after Saquon Barkley with my second pick. If Tyjae Spears was my steal pick, then my reach pick was probably Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to have a great year. He's consistently a 1,000-yard receiver, but touchdown production needs to go up. I think that's going to happen. That's why I picked him. He wasn't the best wide receiver available. As a matter of fact, the best wide receiver available at the time is my 5th wide receiver, and you'll see in just a minute. But Mike Evans at round 5 is going to be a little interesting, maybe be used in trade value, or he's going to have a blow-up year, and I'm glad to have him on my team. But we're just going to have to wait and see. I think Evans will have a great year. Who knows? And then the next round, I got Amari Cooper from the Browns. Now, if you know, Amari Cooper was one of the best wide receivers going down the stretch last season, including a game against the Texans in which he absolutely went insane. In my league, he put up 62 to 72 points in that single game, which is just something I want. So if Deshaun Watson uses him correctly, or whichever quarterback is going to start, because I don't know if Watson will stay healthy throughout a year, I hope he does. But whoever the quarterback is, Amari Cooper is going to be your number 1 wide receiver. I think he will be one of the best wide receivers this year. And if Mike Evans was number 14 on my list, Amari Cooper was number 19. Okay, so Mike Evans was projected 159 points, and Amari Cooper's projected 157. Not a big gap in between them. But getting Cooper was great. Even though Jaden Reed, who was projected higher points, was still there, I couldn't get him because he's not the number 1 wide receiver, I don't think, even though he should be. But Amari Cooper is clear-cut number 1, so it was easier to take him. My 4th wide receiver was Tank Dell, who I got in my 10th round of my draft. And obviously, I've talked about the wide receivers for the Texans. 3 of them could be number 1s on multiple teams, and Tank Dell is one of them. Before his injury, Tank Dell had a good stretch of games, and even though he's a 3rd wide receiver on the depth chart, which I said I had one of those wide receivers, I think he will still put up some amazing numbers this year. On my list, Tank Dell is number 23, projected 153 points, so let's just hope that he moves himself up on the roster and I'm having him on my team to hopefully, achieve that. Obviously, I didn't get Stephon Diggs, like I was talking about the Josh Allen 2020 thing, but Tank Dell could be a great weapon for CJ Stroud, and let's hope that I struck gold on this one. And then the last wide receiver I got is Rashid Shaheed. He was in my 11th round. He's the 2nd wide receiver for New Orleans. But catch this, on my list, he is number 10 among all wide receivers, projected 176 fantasy points. Now, the new kickoff rule is encouraging more returns, and in my league, not only defenses, but wide receivers and whoever is like returning kickoffs and punts also get points based on yards and scoring. So hopefully the Saints defense isn't as great and Shaheed gets a lot of returns, because if that happens, it doesn't matter if he gets like a few catches, no touchdowns. If he's getting yards in the return game, that is still very, very valuable. And I don't know how nobody saw this coming. He was number 10 on my list, and I let him drop all the way to round 11 and picked him up late because I knew people did not have this guy on their list, and the kickoff rules, that hopefully will be for my advantage, which it was last year because Shaheed was on my team, drafted in round 13 or 12, one of the two, and he was very valuable, even starting in my championship game. He only got 6 points, but still, he was good enough to start. So that is my wide receiver core: A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, Tank Dell, and Rashid Shaheed. And I got them in close proximity with each other. And I hope that this team can produce high numbers throughout the year, maybe even seeing Tank Dell and Rashid Shaheed get some starting reps. With the kicker, in my league, you get points based on extra points, field goals based on how far they are. 40-yard plus field goals get 4 points, 50 yards get 5 points. I wish that in our league we had 60-yard kicks get 6 points, but we don't have that, unfortunately. But with all that said, the number 1 kicker in my projections was Harrison Butker, and if I'm not mistaken, Butker was projected roughly 165 points, tied with Justin Tucker, the 1 and 2 spot. So I got Butker as my first kicker. And then the number 3 kicker was Evan McPherson, who I picked up, who's projected 159. So I got the number 1 and number 3 best kicker by projection in fantasy, even skipping out on Brandon Aubrey, who is someone who I have high hopes for and just recently kicked a 66-yarder. So I have the number 1 and the number 3. Enough said there. I'm most likely going to use Butker throughout the years, but you know, we'll see how each week goes because McPherson is also extremely good. So I'm happy with my kicker core. And lastly, let's look at defenses. In my league, defenses matter a lot. The starting points for defenses generally is 10 points on Yahoo. In my league, it's 35. And you lose points based on how many yards a team gets against you, which starts to rack up at every 100 point. So for every 100 yards, you lose like 3 points. 200 yards, you lose more maybe. And of course, scoring against you, once you get up to 7, 14, that's a problem. So you're looking for a defense that is not being scored on very often and can hold teams to less than ideally 300 yards of total offense. If you can find that kind of defense, you'll be good throughout the year. Obviously, you get points for sacks, which in our league is heavy. You get points for tackles for losses, interceptions, fumble recoveries, touchdowns, obviously, and of course, kick returns and punt returns. So there's a lot of scoring avenues for defenses. So with that said, obviously, defenses matter a lot. So with my 8th pick, I had the Ravens defense, who is number 2 on my list, projected at 325 total fantasy points throughout the year. I want this kind of defense. The Ravens are deep in depth and they are ferocious. And the Ravens have always been a defensive-minded team, so you want that. Obviously, the Chiefs were available, but I wanted the Ravens because I do think the Chiefs lost some valuable pieces. And the Ravens, to me, only lost one valuable piece, but otherwise retained most of them. And their secondary looks great for me, personally. That's why I had the Ravens as my first defense. And then I got the Bengals with my last overall pick. And the reason why I chose the Bengals, they were 7th on my list. They were projected 272 fantasy points. While I don't know their depth, obviously I'm not going to use them often. And I even drafted the Bengals last year and immediately dropped them. So this one is kind of just a up in the air kind of pick. But the Ravens is where I'm centric on. I'm high on defenses because last year I had the Niners and the Jets, who on my list are 3 and 4 respectfully. Obviously I didn't get them because I opted for the Ravens and missed out on them. Oh well, you can't blame me for that one. But the Ravens defense, that should be a good pick, and getting them early is probably going to be very helpful. So if my ideology is correct, I picked the Ravens at a really good spot, and that's all I hope for. And that will do it for my entire team. In review, I got Jonathan Taylor with my first pick, AJ Brown with my second pick, Isaiah Pacheco with my third pick, CJ Stroud with my fourth pick, Mike Evans with my 5th pick, Amari Cooper with my 6th pick, my 7th pick went to Rachaad White, my 8th pick went to the Ravens defense, my 9th pick went to Harrison Butker, my 10th pick was Tank Dell, while my 11th pick was Rashid Shaheed, my 12th pick was Brock Purdy, my 13th pick was Tyjae Spears, my 14th pick was Evan McPherson, and my 15th pick was the Cincinnati Bengals defense. That is the team moving forward. I hope you guys are excited as I am, because I think that I killed it in this draft, honestly. For being a low pick, I think I really rounded out my team very well. And that will do it for today's episode. So the way fantasy is going to work throughout the year is when I make my week by week video, they're going to be the first thing I talk about generally before I get into the picks for each Saturday and Sunday game. So be prepared for that and tell me what you think about my fantasy team. Even share with me your fantasy football team. Now, I have a second fantasy league, but I'm not going to put a lot of attention on that in this video. I probably will release it on some YouTube shorts. But other than that, this is the team that we're going to be paying attention going forward. So I hope you guys are excited. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. And go follow me on all my social medias and even interact with me on social media. Shorts, maybe TikToks. But anyways, that'll do it for today's episode. So hope you guys have a great day. Take care. The next episode will be a fun one because we're going to be looking at all the records for every single NFL team. But until then, stay tuned. and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.